Dr. Elena Corey hunched over her workstation in the dimly lit Cynobiology lab, surrounded by screens displaying the anomalous readings that had dragged her from academic exile back to the International Space Coalition. 3 years since they'd revoked her credentials over methodological concerns, and suddenly she was essential again. Funny how the universe worked. "Still think it's a comet with unusual albedo properties?" she asked, not bothering to turn around when the lab doors whooshed open. Director Yamamoto cleared his throat. "The President's Science Council has officially classified it as a non-terrestrial vessel. Your unique perspective is needed." Elena allowed herself a thin smile. "My crackpot theories about non-linear evolutionary paths, you mean? The object is decelerating using technology that," he hesitated, "resembles our Miyake-Nakamura fusion drive, but implemented incorrectly, almost as if someone built it based on public schematics without understanding the underlying principles." That got her attention. Elena spun her chair around, fatigue momentarily forgotten. "Show me." The main display lit up with high-resolution imagery from the Lunar Observatory. The vessel, if that's what it was, looked like no spacecraft humanity had ever constructed. Its hull comprised crystalline segments that shifted position seemingly at random, refracting sunlight in hypnotic patterns. But the propulsion system was unmistakably human-inspired. A crude approximation of Earth's breakthrough fusion technology from 2079, with modifications that made no logical sense. "It's broadcasting," Yamamoto said quietly, "on multiple frequencies simultaneously, using Earth's own communication protocols from different eras, some dating back to the 1940s. They've been watching us," Elena breathed, "for a very long time." 48 hours later, Elena stood in the United Nations Assembly Hall as the first official transmission from the Venerai played on enormous screens. The crystalline beings moved with precise, almost mathematical motions, their translucent bodies housing complex internal structures that pulsed with colored light as they communicated. "We greet humanity with profound respect." The subtitles read, "The translation algorithms struggling with the aliens' complex tonal language. We seek knowledge exchange with your species, cultural and historical records of technological development. We offer astronomical data from regions unknown to your observatories." The assembled world leaders murmured amongst themselves. Such a request seemed harmless enough. Historical archives in exchange for star charts. Yet something in the aliens' movements set Elena's analytical mind racing. Their gestures displayed micro-tremors inconsistent with their apparent physiology. Their communication patterns showed subtle irregularities that the translation AI missed entirely. When the Security Council voted to approve the exchange, Elena was the lone dissenting scientific advisor. "They're hiding something," she insisted to the American ambassador. "Notice how they specifically request historical technological development patterns, not our current capabilities. How they alternate between communication systems instead of using our most efficient protocols. They're deliberately avoiding displaying technological consistency." "Dr. Curry," the ambassador sighed, "your concerns have been noted, but the potential benefits of first contact outweigh your hunches." That night, Elena requisitioned ISC surveillance footage and analyzed it in her private lab. Frame by frame, she mapped the Venerai movements, isolating patterns that emerged only when viewed at specific intervals. It took her 27 hours of continuous work to see what everyone else had missed. The Venerai weren't just being diplomatic. In the micro-movements between formal gestures, in the subtle radiation patterns from their internal structures, Elena decoded an unmistakable emotional state that transcended biological differences. The aliens were terrified, and they were running from something. 6 months into humanity's cautious diplomatic relationship with the Venerai, Elena Corey found herself watching dawn break over the Atacama Observatory's massive adaptive arrays. Sleep had become an increasingly rare commodity since her unauthorized research project began. "Dr. Corey," her assistant's voice crackled through her earpiece, "you need to see this." The main observation deck erupted into chaos as Elena entered. Astronomers clustered around displays, their expressions cycling between wonder and alarm. "They just appeared," said Chief Astronomer Rivera, gesturing toward the screens. "One moment empty space, the next. This." The long-range sensors showed dozens of vessels materializing at the edge of the solar system, each utterly distinct from the others. Some resembled ancient sailing ships with gossamer solar sails stretching for kilometers. Others looked like primitive NASA capsules from the 1960s with puzzling modifications. A few mimicked modern spacecraft designs with bizarre ornamental additions that served no apparent purpose. "They're not even attempting to hide," Alina murmured, her suspicions deepening. Her private research facility, funded by eccentric billionaire Rajan Kapur after every government had rejected her grant proposals, had spent months analyzing the Veneri's bizarre behavior. While the ISC celebrated cultural exchanges and the UN hailed a new era of interspecies cooperation, Alina's team had been mapping discrepancies that pointed to a very different story. "The Veneri have requested an emergency diplomatic assembly," her earpiece announced. "All senior scientific advisors are required to attend." Alina had other plans. 3 hours later, she slipped through the maintenance corridors of the new Geneva space elevator, her stolen service credentials barely passing security. The Veneri delegation had established their diplomatic headquarters at the elevator's orbital terminal, presumably for the ease of communication with their ships. But Alina suspected the crystalline beings preferred the zero-gravity environment that more closely matched their homeworld. The service shaft opened into a rarely used observation lounge. Alina froze as voices echoed from the adjacent chamber. The Veneri were supposed to be at the diplomatic assembly planetside. Reproduction exactly matches mid-20th century combustion principles, including the inefficient oxygen cycling. A Veneri voice chittered in their strange harmonics. "But why preserve the inefficiency?" Another responded. "Our simulation shows 17 more optimal configurations. The pattern is what matters. The harvesters detect optimization algorithms. Human technological paths follow no optimization pattern their systems can recognize." Alina's breath caught in her throat as she carefully positioned her custom-built scanner around the corner. The holographic display revealed 5 Veneri engineers surrounded by historical artifacts from across human history. Stone wheels beside vacuum tubes beside quantum processors, all meticulously arranged in no apparent order. "Time compression is failing," one Veneri said, its crystalline form flickering with colors Alina had learned to associate with extreme stress. "We cannot replicate their full technological evolution before detection. Then we must focus on the most chaotic periods," another responded. "Priority to their digital revolution, the most inefficient, redundant technological explosion in their history. Multiple competing standards, abandoned protocols, technological dead ends, the perfect camouflage." Alina's scanner beeped, louder than she'd anticipated. The Veneri froze, their internal structures pulsing with alarm colors. She ran. 2 weeks later, after evading both Earth security and Veneri patrols, Alina launched her most dangerous mission yet. Using stealth technology derived from her analysis of Veneri communications, she managed to dock with one of their smaller vessels during a maintenance cycle. What she found inside changed everything she thought she knew. The ship wasn't just studying human technology. It was a chaotic museum of human invention, from stone tools to nuclear reactors to quantum computers, all functioning simultaneously. And strangest of all, deliberate inefficiencies had been introduced into every system, creating a technological signature unlike anything in human or Veneri design. They weren't just copying humanity's technology. They were copying our mistakes. "You've gone too far this time, Alina." Director Yamamoto's voice echoed through the secure quantum channel. "Breaking into a Veneri vessel. Do you have any idea what you've done to our diplomatic relations?" Alina adjusted the environmental controls of her stolen shuttle. After her hasty escape from the Veneri ship, every government and corporate entity in the solar system had branded her a fugitive. "They're lying to us, Director. All this talk about cultural exchange is cover for something else." I've seen it. You have 8 hours to surrender to ISC authorities before we deploy hunter drones. Even Kepper's money can't protect you now. The transmission cut off as Elena's shuttle entered the troposphere above New Atlantis, the underwater research metropolis constructed after the Antarctic ice shelf collapse of 2063. If anyone could help decipher the stolen Veneri data crystal, it was Professor Hendrik Laszlo, her former mentor and the world's foremost expert in non-human linguistic structures. Unfortunately, Laszlo hadn't published meaningful research in 5 years, not since his theories about crystalline consciousnesses had been publicly ridiculed by the scientific establishment. Elena found him in a low-rent pressure pod at the outer edge of the city dome, surrounded by empty synthetic alcohol containers and holographic equations frozen mid-calculation. The prodigal student returns, he slurred, not bothering to stand. Come to see how the mighty have fallen. I need your help, Professor. It's about the Veneri. His bloodshot eyes narrowed. Crystals that think, just like I proposed. Yet somehow I'm still the laughingstock while the world celebrates alien contact. Elena placed the data crystal on his cluttered desk. Decode this, and you'll have your vindication. 16 hours later, with ASC hunter drones sweeping the city's external parameters, Laszlo's decryption algorithms finally cracked the Veneri security protocols. The holographic projector flickered to life, displaying images that made Elena's blood run cold. Crystalline cities disintegrating into dust, massive shadow ships descending from the stars, geometric impossibilities that seemed to fold space around themselves. Billions of Veneri fleeing into underground shelters as their homeworld's moons shattered one by one. My God, Laszlo whispered, suddenly sober. The translation matrix resolved the accompanying Veneri data streams. Harvester detection protocols breached. Primary defense network compromised. Evacuation plan Omega initiated. Technological regression protocols active. All advanced systems to be decommissioned immediately. They've been hiding, Elena said, the pieces finally clicking into place. The Veneri have survived for millennia by remaining technologically primitive, concealing their true intelligence. Further fragments revealed the horrifying truth. The Harvesters were an ancient machine intelligence programmed to eliminate advanced civilizations once they reached specific technological thresholds. Their predictive algorithms could detect the typical progression patterns of developing species and eradicate them before they achieved capabilities that could threaten galactic stability. But what does this have to do with human technology? Laszlo asked, frantically correlating data points. The final decryption answered his question. The Veneri, normally methodical and logical beings who valued efficiency above all else, had made a desperate gamble after the Harvesters discovered their homeworld. Instead of developing their own technology, which would follow the same predictable patterns the Harvesters could easily detect, they were attempting to replicate humanity's uniquely chaotic technological evolution as a survival strategy. The lab's emergency alert system suddenly blared. Long-range sensors had detected something massive entering the outer solar system. Objects so large they distorted the background radiation patterns. And they weren't reflecting any light at all. We should be dead already, Elena said, studying the sensor readings from the experimental Veneri-human hybrid ship. Beside her, Extraterrestrials' crystalline form pulsed with colors that indicated a mixture of fear and determination. 3 days earlier, in a twist no intelligence analyst could have predicted, the Veneri ambassador had broken protocol and sought Elena out personally. The crystalline being had appeared in Laszlo's lab through what could only be described as an interdimensional tear, bypassing every security measure in New Atlantis. You've seen the truth, Extraterrestrials had said without preamble. Now we need your help. The unlikely alliance formed within hours, with Earth's governments still debating whether to treat the Veneri as friends or invaders. Elena, Laszlo, and Extraterrestrials had commandeered an experimental scout ship and launched toward the outer solar system. Now they hovered at the edge of Neptune's orbit, witnessing the arrival of humanity's potential extinction. The Harvester constructs defied comprehension, massive geometric structures that continually reconfigured like impossible origami puzzles, each movement violating fundamental laws of physics. Where they passed, matter simply ceased to exist, converted to energy and absorbed. Pluto's small moon Hydra disappeared in seconds as the nearest harvester seemingly unfolded into higher dimensions around it. Their targeting algorithms are predictive, Extraterrestrials explained, manipulating the ship's sensors. They analyze technological signatures and calculate probable development paths. When they identify patterns consistent with Type IO civilization emergence, they eliminate the threat. But we're nowhere near Type IO. Elena protested. Humanity can barely harness our own sun's energy, let alone. A proximity alert blared. One of the smaller harvester constructs had altered course, heading directly toward their position. Chaotic evasion pattern. Extraterrestrials chittered urgently. Elena seized the manual controls, an automotive steering wheel inexplicably integrated into the ship's otherwise advanced systems. What kind of evasion pattern? Something no logical species would attempt. Understanding dawned. Elena swung the ship into a suicidal trajectory directly toward Comet 2079X3, whose debris field stretched across their sector. No trained pilot would ever fly into such a navigational nightmare. But Elena wasn't trained. She was desperate. As they corkscrewed through the comet's debris field, chunks of ice and rock pinging off their shields, the pursuing harvester seemed to hesitate, its prediction algorithms failing to anticipate their chaotic course. It's working. Laszlo shouted from the sensor station. Its targeting system can't establish a lock. They emerged on the far side of the debris field, the harvester temporarily confused by their unpredictable maneuver. Elena set course for Earth, pushing the hybrid drive system beyond safety parameters. Now do you understand? Extraterrestrials asked quietly. This is why we sought your species specifically. Back on Earth, the UN Security Council had convened an emergency summit in the underwater headquarters beneath the Pacific. Elena and Extraterrestrials arrived just as the Veneri delegation was making their desperate case. The lead Veneri diplomat activated a holographic display showing technological development paths of 100 extinct civilizations, elegant, efficient progressions following logical optimization algorithms. Beside them, humanity's technological history appeared as a chaotic tangle of overlapping, redundant, and often abandoned developments. Your species, the Veneri diplomat explained to the stunned assembly, wastes resources on multiple competing technologies for the same purpose. You abandon promising paths for cultural reasons. You preserve outdated systems alongside advanced ones. You are technologically irrational. And that may be the only thing that saves us all. The first harvester attack came without warning. Neptune's atmosphere began to shimmer and distort as the massive fractal constructs unfolded into dimensions human instruments could barely detect. Within hours, the gas giant's distinctive blue had faded to a pale shadow as the harvesters methodically extracted its hydrogen and helium for unknown purposes. Targeting solutions ineffective, reported General Santos from Earth Defense Command. The holographic displays in the crisis bunker beneath Mount Fuji showed humanity's most advanced weapons, antimatter missiles, orbital defense platforms, prototype quantum disruptors, dissipating harmlessly against the harvesters' constantly shifting geometries. They're not even fighting back, Elena observed. They're just ignoring us. Outside, Veneri ships employing replicated human technology attempted desperate attacks of their own. One by one, they unraveled into constituent atoms, harvested with mathematical precision. The harvesters' targeting algorithms methodically identified and eliminated the most advanced Veneri vessels first, working backward through their approximate technological evolution. Tokyo evacuation at 30%. An aide reported as tremors shook the bunker. 3 harvesters had entered Earth orbit, their impossible shadows darkening entire continents. Elena slipped away during the chaos, making her way to the surface. The old shrine still stood untouched beside the ultra-modern skyscrapers of New Tokyo, a deliberate preservation of history that now struck her as uniquely human. As she watched the harvesters' methodical approach, a pattern emerged in their targeting sequence. Her comlink chirped with an encrypted signal. Laszlo and Extraterrestrials had survived the initial assault and were holed up in an abandoned research facility with a teenage engineering prodigy named Hiroshi and a battle-scarred Venerai engineer. "They're working backward," Elena explained urgently when she reached them. "The harvesters are systematically eliminating technologies in reverse order of development. Most advanced first, then progressively older systems. Logical from an efficiency standpoint." Ayerthal acknowledged, crystalline form dimmed from injury. "Eliminate the most dangerous technologies before they can be deployed." The teenage prodigy looked up from the circuit board he was modifying. "Then we should use the technologies they'd expect us to have abandoned." With Earth's military command in disarray after a devastating harvester strike on Geneva, Elena's Ragdig team commandeered an emergency broadcast system. Over the strenuous objections of surviving military leaders, they issued a planetary directive that defied all conventional warfare doctrine. "Abandon advanced systems," Elena instructed. "Deploy obsolete, illogical technologies that follow no rational development path." Around the world, desperate defensive efforts shifted. Cold War-era nuclear missiles were retrofitted with hand-calculated trajectories instead of AI guidance. Medieval catapults launched warheads tipped with quantum-entangled particles. Radio systems from the 1940s carried digital encryption that shouldn't have been possible with their components. As the harvesters entered low Earth orbit, humanity's chaotic defense bloomed like a technological fever dream. EMP devices triggered by mechanical clockwork, digital systems running on reprogrammed analog components, vacuum tube computers calculating firing solutions for particle weapons. For the first time, the harvesters' attack patterns faltered. Their geometric perfection wavered as predictive algorithms encountered technological chaos they could not categorize. "It's working," Laszlo whispered, watching the sensor readings. "They can't predict what we'll do next because we don't know what we'll do next." On the main screen, a harvester construct attempting to dismantle Tokyo suddenly paused mid-configuration, its perfect symmetry disrupted by what appeared to be confusion. "The confusion won't last," Extraterrestrials warned as they watched the harvesters reconfigure after their momentary hesitation. "They are adaptation engines. They will eventually develop new prediction algorithms." Earth's chaotic defense had bought them time, but the harvesters' onslaught had already reduced major cities to rubble. Military satellites showed Chicago and Mumbai as smoking craters, while Shanghai had simply vanished beneath a geometric distortion that defied analysis. "There has to be something else we can use against them," Elena insisted, studying the data from the surviving Venerai ships. Extraterrestrials' crystalline form pulsed with decision colors. "There is one possibility. Our archival vessel in your asteroid belt. It contains the collected knowledge of thousands of worlds the harvesters have destroyed. If there is a pattern, a vulnerability." Their hybrid ship screamed through the upper atmosphere, pushing structural integrity to its limits. Behind them, two harvester constructs altered course to intercept, their initial confusion giving way to renewed pursuit. Laszlo's fingers danced across the navigation console, plotting a chaotic course through Earth's orbital debris field, centuries of abandoned satellites and space junk forming an unintentional defensive maze. "Hiroshi," Elena called to the teenage prodigy, "can you modify our engine signature?" The boy nodded, already elbow-deep in circuitry. "I can make it look like 3 different centuries of technology operating simultaneously." As they approached the asteroid belt, Extraterrestrials guided them toward what appeared to be an unremarkable carbonaceous asteroid. Only when they were meters away did the holographic camouflage shimmer, revealing a massive crystalline structure. The Venerai archive vessel. "We have minutes at most," Laszlo warned, eyes fixed on the sensor display. The harvesters had paused at the edge of the asteroid belt, their configurations shifting, as if analyzing the chaotic, unpredictable paths through the tumbling rocks. Inside the archive, Elena and her team descended through physically impossible spaces, rooms that were larger inside than out, corridors that looped back on themselves in defiance of Euclidean geometry. The Venerai, it seemed, had their own reality-bending technologies, kept deliberately primitive to avoid harvester detection. "Here," Extraterrestrials said finally, leading them into a vast chamber lined with crystalline memory matrices. The complete technological record of every species the harvesters have eliminated. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing the technological development paths of thousands of extinct civilizations. Each followed elegant, logical progressions, beautiful in their efficiency, predictable in their evolution. Beside them, humanity's technological history appeared as a tangled, contradictory mess. "I don't understand," Hiroshi said, studying the displays. "We're so inefficient." "Exactly," Elena breathed, the final piece clicking into place. "Look at how each of these other species developed technology. Clean, logical progression from one breakthrough to the next. No redundancies, no competing standards, no abandoned paths." Laszlo nodded, understanding dawning. "Our biological and social characteristics, curiosity, competitiveness, territoriality, cultural attachments, led us to develop technologies in ways no logical species ever would. You built nuclear weapons before you cured cancer," Extraterrestrials observed, crystalline form shimmering with something like awe. "You developed spaceflight and social media simultaneously. You still use combustion engines alongside fusion power. No optimization algorithm would ever produce your species' technological signature." As they delved deeper into the archives, they discovered something even the Venerai had overlooked. Records suggesting the harvesters themselves were created by an ancient species to eliminate civilizations following predictable technological paths that would inevitably lead to dangerous dimensional manipulations or reality warping weapons. A violent tremor shook the archive. On the external sensors, they watched as the harvesters began their final approach to Earth, breaking through the chaotic defenses one by one. The hybrid ship shuddered under harvester fire as they made their desperate return journey to Earth. Warning systems blared as structural integrity failed section by section. "We won't make it to a landing facility," Laszlo shouted over the noise. "Best I can do is put us down somewhere populated." Elena clutched the crystal data core they'd extracted from the archives. "Rio, the old city. There's a research complex beneath Cristo Redentor." The ship screamed through the atmosphere, trailing debris and vaporized hull material. They crashed into the waters of Guanabara Bay, the impact throwing them against restraints as emergency systems deployed. Through the viewport, Elena saw the once magnificent skyline of Rio de Janeiro, now a landscape of twisted rubble and makeshift defenses. Above, the iconic Cristo Redentor statue stood partially shattered, its outstretched arm broken but still reaching skyward. The harvesters have broken through the outer defensive perimeter, a haggard Brazilian commander informed them when they reached the underground bunker. "Global communications are failing. Organized resistance is crumbling." The bunker itself was a chaotic blend of military precision and desperate improvisation. Quantum computers sat beside vacuum tube radios. Holographic displays flickered as they switched between power sources. Soldiers wore a mishmash of modern combat exoskeletons and traditional ballistic armor. Elena connected the Venerai data core to Earth's remaining communications network. "I need to broadcast globally, to every system still functioning." "What's the plan?" Hiroshi asked, already modifying the bunker's transmitters to accommodate the alien technology. "Amplify our technological chaos," Elena explained. "Not just in our defenses, but in our entire technological signature." Using the last functioning satellite network, Earth's surviving nations coordinated a massive technological disinformation campaign. They broadcast contradictory technological signatures, quantum communications transmitted through modified analog TV towers, digital signals carried by mechanical telegraphs. primitive radio waves encoded with advanced encryption that shouldn't have been possible with such technology. It's not enough, Extraterrestrials warned, monitoring the harvester's approach. They're adapting too quickly. That's when the teenage prodigy made his breakthrough. Hiroshi had been experimenting with repurposed gaming consoles and kitchen appliances, creating a harvester detection system that operated on principles no engineer would consider viable. Yet somehow, it worked better than military-grade sensors. The harvesters aren't just looking for advanced technology, he realized. They're looking for predictable technological evolution. We need to be more than chaotic. We need to be impossible. Around the world, the directives spread. Children's toys were weaponized alongside military hardware. A group of watchmakers in Switzerland built mechanical AI systems that predicted harvester movements using principles abandoned by computer science centuries ago. An elderly plumber in Nairobi created water pressure computing systems that calculated defensive grid patterns with uncanny accuracy. Most remarkably, the surviving Venerai, watching humanity's desperate creativity in action, began to change. For millennia, they had been logical, methodical beings obsessed with efficiency and order. Now they abandoned their careful attempt to precisely replicate human technology. Instead, they embraced chaos itself, creating hybrid technologies neither species could have developed alone. "Look," Laszlo whispered, pointing to the monitors showing the harvester attack patterns. The perfect geometric precision of their movements had begun to fragment. Their predictive algorithms, designed to identify and eliminate logical technological progression, encountered paradoxes and contradictions at every turn. For the first time in recorded history, the harvesters were confused.